All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've now heard all of the testimony. You've now received all of the evidence. It's now time for closing arguments. If you will give counsel your attention, first by the state.
Please, Court.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to talk to you very briefly today about what we know, what evidence we've heard, what testimony you've heard, what you've seen, from everything on the video to the chemical analysis to the experts to everything. What I want to talk about right now is just what we know. There's the question. We start with Cristina. Cristina was a child born with cerebral palsy. She could not walk. She couldn't grasp. She couldn't talk. She could show emotion, because you've seen, versus this photograph, you can see the child can show emotions, and that's going to be relevant in a few minutes to what I'm talking about. But Cristina was not like other girls. She was totally dependent, 100%, on other people. She was dependent on everybody, for somebody to take care of her, somebody to give her food, somebody to give her water, somebody to keep her safe. Cristina was totally dependent on Rita to do all of those things. Every day. Every day. Not just on Rita's good days. Not just on days when Rita is posing for photographs. Not just when Rita is sober. But even on the days when Rita chooses to go hang out with Larry and get high on meth. Cristina was dependent upon her then too. Wholly dependent on her. Even when Rita was high. And you heard testimony from defense witnesses, and they came in and they told you what they did. One had not really had much contact with her for 18 years, except through Facebook. Her daughter came in and said what a daughter should say. She's a good mother. But neither one of them knew about the meth. Neither one of them. And we know on that day, where none of those witnesses were, they didn't know what was going on. On that day, on that weekend, on that Friday, that Saturday, the Sunday, and the Monday, we know that they were on a meth bender. We know it because we took their blood. You know it because you had a chemist, 1, 2, 3 chemists come in and tell you that. Methamphetamine in both Rita's blood as well as Larry, and all well over the limit that would make them high. And if you didn't, for whatever reason, think that was enough, Larry told you the same thing. He didn't want to, but he did. He hadn't slept in 3 days. He and Rita had been doing meth. She liked to put it in her coffee. And he didn't want to tell us, but he did. And we know that. And that little girl was dependent upon Rita to take care of her, to keep her safe. Rita was high. And neither her daughter knew about that, nor the other lady that testified. But we know that. Not any shadow of a doubt. What else do we know? We know that Larry had first of all, we know that in the middle of that bender, Rita and Larry get in Larry's truck and go get the child and bring her into that environment where they're getting high. And they go in and they stay the night. And we now know that Larry had a security system, a very good one. A very sensitive one. The one that would pick up any type of motion going in and around the car. And we know, because there's direct testimony, that there was no motion around that car at all until 11:15. And 11:15, the motion we saw with these two going to the car. So what do we know? The car's not on. There's no air conditioning. said, oh, the car was running when we put the child in. Because Larry needed to say the car was running when we put the child in. Not because it was true. And you know, because you could see it. The car went on. There wasn't a revolution. And they left the child in that car for 1 hour and 15 minutes before there was any more motion, before there was any more interaction with that car. We know because of, flip these back around. We know that as of about 11 o'clock is when, about 12 o'clock is when the heat starts spiking inside the car. We know that because we actually brought an expert, Dr. Grunstein, to come testify to you about what happens inside the car when it's that hot outside in August in South Carolina. And this spike starts right after 12 o'clock. Until then, it's about the same as the car. So you're talking about 90 degrees to begin with. And by the time they go back to that car at 12:15, Larry doesn't go back to the car, but Rita does. We're already over here. The heat inside that car is now approaching 100 degrees. And now I want to go back to this. And first of all, let me just stop this here. If all they had done was put that child in a hot car in the middle of August and left that child there for 1 hour and 15 minutes, in some way, miraculously, somebody had come along and gotten that child out, I submit to you they still would have inflicted serious bodily injury on that child, because the definition of serious bodily injury is the likelihood that it could cause serious impairment or death. And I don't think there's any question at all what the end of this result was. If we stop there, you have that. And did they do it together? Absolutely. Even Larry testified to that. We did everything together. Put them in the car together, and you see that? We left them in the car together. And there's your conspiracy. That's not all we have. Unfortunately, it didn't stop there. Unfortunately, the child was not rescued from the people that she depended on or anybody else. So now we're at 12:15. Child has been in the child's been down in the car for 1 hour and 15 minutes. No air, no wind, not even a crack window. Now, Rita goes back to the car. She opens both doors. She opened both doors with air conditions on. She's opening both doors, maybe let a little wind out of there, which is the only considerate thing she did in this entire event. Do you know what else she did? She looked inside the car. And now I want you to think about something. Go back to Christina's picture. This child can show emotion. She can't scream and she can't talk, but she can show emotion. You can see it in her face. So what did she look like when her mother was looking at her after being left in a hot car by herself with no wind in 100-degree heat for 1 hour and 15 minutes? To see when she looks in the car. The child's got to be going, oh, that's not a happy face in that car. After 1 hour and 15 minutes of this heat in that car by herself, a child who's totally dependent on others, she's begging for help. So what does Rita do? She closes the door and goes back inside with Larry. First time, she and Larry put the child in the car. And they go inside, as Larry says, to make up, to have sex. So while they're inside having sex, the child is out in the car. She comes back out, looks at the child. The child at this point had to be begging. She closes the door and goes back inside to spend some more time with Larry. Which, by the way, will be the last time anyone approaches that car to look after that girl. Until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They go back on the porch. Not this one. They go back on the porch about an hour and a half later. They don't actually walk out into the car. They can go see the car. It's been another hour and 15 minutes. They go back out on the porch. They hang out on the porch. And now it's 2 o'clock, 2:02 to be exact. Neither one of them approached the car. The girl is still in there. And what's going on inside the car now? Now it's 2 o'clock, 11, 12, 1, 2. Take a look at the temperature inside that car now. It's now reached that maximum temperature. It's getting closer to that maximum temperature. It's well over 110, 115 degrees inside that car. And they come back out. And do they go check on it? No. What do they do? They hug. They kiss. And then they go back inside for another hour and 15 minutes. The child is literally cooking to death in the car, and they're going back inside again. And they stay in there for an hour and 15 minutes. And then they come back out. This time, Rita actually walks to the car. This is when she finds that the keys are locked in the car. But pay very close attention to this. Where does Rita walk when she walks out of the house? It's now 3 o'clock. The child has been in the car since 11:15. The heat is now at well over 118 degrees. Inside the car, it feels like 135 degrees. You've heard testimony from experts giving you that testimony. And where does Rita go? Does she go to the side of the child's home to check on her? Is she trying to get in the car to drive? No. What's she doing? She's going to get her cigarettes. In the back seat of the car, where they put this child at 11:15, there was a bag in the back seat. Right beside the child. And inside that bag was this. A gun.
Renewed objection.
And not only
401, 403.
May proceed.
And not only was it a gun, it was a loaded gun.
It's overruled.
Again, in a bag, right beside this child. And right there, also, are the cigarettes. She walks back out to the car at 3 o'clock. She's still not going to check on the child. She's not even going to drive away. She's going to get some cigarettes. And she finds that the car is locked. So what do they do? The car is locked. The child has been in the car since 11:15. It is now 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It is well over 118 degrees inside that car. It feels like 135. They have found that the keys are locked in the car. So what do? Naturally, they break the window. No, they don't. Rita says it's too expensive, so I'll break the window.
Objection yesterday, but it's not vaccinated.
Let's go.
Ruling, Your Honor, it was sustained.
Objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Break the window? Now. What do? They hang out. They get on the swing and start swinging back and forth. It's now 3:19. 19 minutes after they found that the child is locked in the car with the keys. 19 minutes after we know for a fact it's already 118 degrees inside the car. And what are they doing? They're swinging. Is there any sense of urgency here? Is at any point in time they're going to say, hey, we need to take care of this child? No, we're swinging. And then what do? They eventually go to Larry's truck, which is parked out back. And now what do? It is now 39 minutes later. It is 3:39. They're still at the house. And they're kissing. taking care of the child, they're not thinking about the child. They're thinking about themselves. So then let's go get a spirit key. This is where the child is. And this is where Larry and Rita go to go get a spare key. Which is why they don't get back for 52 minutes. The child's locked in the car at 3 o'clock. They don't get back until 4. Any sense of urgency there? Any concern for the health and welfare of that child? Did the child even cross their minds? Because they were high. And they were interested in each other. And they were interested in kissing, and hugging, and spending time with each other, and having sex. Even the doctor talked about the increased libido as a result of being high on that. And you see it in all these pictures, because that's what they're concerned about. Not an ounce of concern for that child. 52 minutes. And then when they get back, they arrive 4:40. They get back to the house at 4:40. They're in Larry's truck. Thank goodness, they've got a key. They can come rescue this child now. When did they get out of the truck? They don't open the door till 4:44. They sit in the truck for 4 minutes and talking and hanging out. Again, no concern for the child whatsoever. They're just hanging out in the truck. And eventually they get out. And they approach the car. And when they do, neither one of them are sober enough to even figure out how to unlock the car. Larry testified, I'm pushing the unlock button, but it's not unlocking. It's because he's locking it. He's locking it, he's unlocking, he's pushing it. And the testimony that you heard from Captain Chapman, but also from even Larry, pushing the button and the light's coming on when I'm pushing the button, but it's not unlocking. And what you know is that when it's hit the emergency flasher, it's going flash, flash, flash. But at the end, when it goes blink, 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 that's hitting the lock and the unlock. I think it's once for lock, maybe 2 for unlock, I don't know. But the point is that you can't do that if the car's on. But we already do that. You know how you know that? Because otherwise, if you spend 5 hours in the car in South Carolina driving around with your air conditioning on, we would all be dead. Clearly the air conditioning wasn't on. They may have thought it was, but clearly the car wasn't on, the air conditioning wasn't on. And why do we know that? Because the child cooked to death. That's why. And also something else. Not one piece of testimony, not one person, not one came in here and said, I turned the car on. Larry said, the car was already on when I put the child in there. Although we know that's not true. Did Larry say he turned the car on? Nope. What did Larry say? I turned the car off. And we'll get to that in just a second. So they get the child and they pull the child out of the car. What happens then? Oh, and by the way, one other thing too. If they haven't gotten the child out of the car yet, they can't figure out how to unlock it. It's now 4:47, and they're back to hugging again. That's not a distraught picture because they haven't pulled the child out of the car yet. They're still hugging and kissing. They still haven't focused on the child. And eventually we get the child out of the car. And what happens after that? They pull the child up. They pull the child out. Larry calls 911. What does Rita do? She leaves. When Hallie Godley gets there, Rita's nowhere to be found. She's inside the house. And that's particularly relevant for what we're going to talk about in just a second. He calls 911, but before the police get there, what does he say? I reached in and turned the car off. Why would you do that? He's calling 911. Police are on the way. Why does he reach in the car and turn it off? Don't want to waste gas? What? Why would you in any way, shape, or form stop what you're doing when there is a dead child on the ground to go reach in and turn the car off? You wouldn't. There's no reason for that. But there's a real good reason to reach inside that car and turn it on. And what you heard Captain Chapman say today is, when we got there, the car was running. The air conditioner was working just like it was working 3 days ago. There was no compression issue with that car, compressor issue with that car. It works. And the air was on, the car was running, but it wasn't cold inside. The air conditioner was going cold, but it wasn't cold inside that car. Why? Because Larry had just turned it on right before the police got there. Why? Because he knew he just murdered that child. That's why. And by the way, what did Rita say when they finally went and got Rita out of the house and brought her out? What did she say? Hallie Godley testified to this Monday that it was the very first witness. She said, I brought Rita out, and Rita said, we put the child in the car. I went inside to get cigarettes. I came back out, and the car was locked. That was her description of what happened. Even Rita didn't say the car was on with the air conditioner running. Because that would have been the very first thing out of her mouth if that was true. Instead it was, this was just a matter of seconds. I went inside to get cigarettes. I came back out, and the car was locked. That was it. Because Rita didn't know they had the camera system. Thank goodness they did. Because we wouldn't know any better. But we do know better. The child wasn't just in the car for a split second. The child was in the car for 5 hours and 42 minutes. It's an awful long time. Everything I have told you so far, you know. No issue about it, just we know. I think we'll refer about that. So you know what happened. The question is before you now is, will you call it? What is it? You know what it is. You've seen it. You've heard the testimony. The question is, what do you call it? Putting that child in the car to begin with, and leaving that child in the car, exposing that child to potential death, was the infliction of injury to that child. It rose to the level of substantial death. The first charge, they did that early. The conspiracy, they did everything together. What about the rest of the 4 hours that the child was in the car? What about the pain and the suffering that that child had to endure before they died, as Dr. Vitalis testified to you? We expect at 105 degrees that people start dying. We've all had fevers. You know how bad you feel at 100-degree fever or 101. Child's inside temperature was 110. And Dr. Vitalis said, I'll be honest with you, I think at 104, 105, the brain stops working, the organs start shutting down. She vomited into her throat. She defecated in her diaper. You see that in the crime scene pictures. Her whole body just stopped working. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't expect her to last more than an hour in those conditions. And they put her in those conditions for 5 hours and 42 minutes. So we know about the infliction of serious bodily injury. You know about the conspiracy. What do you call the child's death? Well, murder is the unlawful killing of another with malice. What does that mean? Unlawful killing of another, that's pretty easy, but what's malice? Well, there are 2 ways to show malice. One is expressed. If you walk up to somebody and say, I hate you, I'm going to kill you, I don't care if you live or die, you shoot them in the head, that's expressed malice. This case is about implied malice. And what is implied malice? Implied malice is that you can take from the facts and circumstances of the case, what you have seen, what you have heard, what you know about this case, that someone was so extremely reckless that they had a wanton disregard for human life They may not even have direct ill feelings toward that one individual, but their attitude, their actions, all of the things that they chose to do, all the way they chose to act, all led back to a conscious disregard for the lives of others, and in this case, the other person was Cristina, a child totally dependent on them for safety. A wickedness, a depravity, malicious. And we know what malicious is. And so I ask you, as you go back and look at all this, at what point in time in any of this did either one of these two people show an ounce of compassion or care or concern for Cristina's life? If they had walked up to her and shot her, she wouldn't have suffered the pain that she suffered in this case.
Objection, Your Honor, that inflammatory. Matter of law, is appropriate time.
Objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. 5 hours and 42 minutes of suffering. You see the blisters on her legs, the burn marks from her coming in contact with other parts of that car that was also rose to the level of 118 degrees or 135. She was burned externally and internally. What do you call it? Well, I'll tell you that if you're sitting around talking to your family members or your friends and you're describing this situation to them, you may not talk in terms of legal anything. But I think a good way to describe this is torture. Jenna was tortured. Before Larry and Rita, after Larry and Rita. Not the Larry and Rita that these other people didn't know. The Larry and Rita that were high on meth. And these bruises and these blisters that Dr. Vitalis described, torture. And you don't accidentally torture somebody. You treat them with such a lack of disregard for their human life that they die because of the torture. And that's what happened in this case. In the real world, you're talking to fans and family, and you're describing all of this, you might use the word torture. But in this courtroom today, they ask you to use the word murder.